Now, before I move on to the next topic, I need to distinguish between independent samples and dependent samples. Now, so far I've talked about one-sample methods and two-sample methods. One-sample methods would be things like a one-sample z-test, or a one-sample z-test for proportions, or a one-sample t-test. In each of these tests, one sample was being compared to a known population value. Now, we're going to be doing two-sample methods. Here, we're going to be taking one sample and comparing it to another sample. So here are two samples. We have sample A and sample B. These samples are independent of one another if members of one sample are unrelated to members of the other sample. And these samples are dependent if members of one sample are related to members of the other sample. So first of all, imagine this. Let's say we just took a random person and put them into sample A, and they got a score of 5. And then we took a random person and put them into sample B, and they got a sample of 9. Sample A and sample B are independent because members of each are unrelated. Like, just because there's someone in sample B who got a 9, it's not in any way affected by the person who got a 5 in sample A. They were just randomly placed in there, and they have no effect on one another. This will be easier to understand if I show you an example of a dependent sample. So imagine now sample A is husbands and sample B is wives. So we have this 5 for husband, the first husband in sample A. Now, in order for this 9 to be here, we can't just pick any random person, any independent value. We have to pick the wife that is associated with that husband. The person that we put into that spot depends on the person we put into that spot in the other sample. That's why they are dependent samples. Sample A and sample B are dependent because the members of each are related. Or imagine if it was before and after. If we put a 5 here, the 9 here has to come from the same person that the 5 came from because it's before and after. It can't be just any value. It depends on the value that was in the other sample. So sample A and sample B are dependent, again, because the members of each are related. Those would be two examples of dependent samples. So those are independent and dependent samples.